Am I
Say
there?
hi. You're on.
You're live. Okay.
Hello, Internet, and welcome to this week's episode of Lit, where we have been reading. What have we been reading? The Eye of the World, Wheel
part
of
of
Time
the
series.
Yeah, Wheel of Time series.
And I'm gonna got my notifications so I can call up, see if we have any chatters, which we probably won't. But,
Okay, well, excellent.
so this week we were supposed to discuss a series of chapters, but our fearless leader Adi is sick with bronchitis. Allegedly. And she's also at work, so that we know is real. She got called into work. But I and Mark adopted a new puppy here, Pfeiffer, and so I didn't finish the reading assignment. So, Travis is our guest today.
Yes, hello everybody.
And we are going to discuss, so far, our reflections on the first book, and we've almost finished it, and how it will translate into a series and compare it to Game of Thrones. So,
It won't.
So this is Lit. I am Andrew.
I am Travis.
That's the Drug Watch,
And
now
now
our
our
talk
talk
begins.
begins.
And we clink in the show.
Oh,
So-
more gentlemanly.
So, so we started reading Eye of the World because it's supposed to be the next Game of Thrones on a long list of shows that are supposed to be the next Game of Thrones.
Yeah, so the next Game of Thrones title that everybody keeps throwing out haphazardly, some with credit, some with not credit. So when we found out Audie was going to be a no-show tonight due to work and sickness and all those other different things, Andrew was possibly just going to do a see you next time, sorry about the situation. But then I suggested, how about we finally do kind of a little bit of a pair-up? You know, I have not read any of this. Andrew has. However, I have read all of the Game of Thrones books that are currently out. And aside from the big fact that
You've read all the Game of Thrones books.
I've read all the Game of Thrones. Not listened, not audiobook listened, but actually read, physically held them.
No. You said you read all the ones that are out. I said you've read them all.
There might be more.
When he dies.
I've still got fingers crossed that he might come out. But aside from the simple sheer difference in volume, there are 5 Game of Thrones books out, unless if you count some of the extra ones, talking about the pre-stuff. There are, 14?
14.
There are 14 books
There are
in
14
the Wheel of
books
Time series.
in the Wheel of Time.
So you got quite a big difference in information, scope, things that you can pull on. And I wrote down a few simple questions that we can kind of compare the
Hi,
two.
Annette.
Hello, Annette. Wrote down a few simple questions that I can kind of propose to Andrew, and he can answer them. Kind of give a little bit of a, how
Off the
you
cuff.
doing, what's
Off the
going
cuff.
on. So, I guess one of the big things with Game of Thrones, especially those people who got into the show before reading the books, but more importantly to the books, there are a lot of characters in the Game of Thrones multiverse, we'll say that. And that being said, in the first book of the Game of Thrones, you're introduced to the entire Stark family, introduced to the Baratheon family, some of them for the most part. You're introduced to these group of people in the Night's Watch. You're introduced to this mysterious character who brings back people from the dead. You're introduced to all these different clans and people, Stormborns and Baratheons, and
Wait, who brings people back from the dead?
well, in the very first scene or the first
okay.
chapter is that guy in the woods.
The White Walker.
Yeah,
kind
the
of
White
is that-
Walker.
Yeah, okay.
So you've got all of these different characters, and you have no idea really what's happening with them until you get a little bit better idea by the end of the first book. How are we compared to Eye of
Eye of the World.
Eye of the World? Do
Well,
we
the Wheel
have-
of Time, because the series will be Wheel of Time.
Wheel of Time. Okay,
Wheel
so
of Time.
Wheel of Time. How many characters are we dealing with?
Okay, so, I guess, generally speaking, though, we're looking more of a Lord of the Rings scope rather than a Game of Thrones scope.
That is
So,
something that I read as well.
I would say our heroes are Rand, Mat, Perrin, and Egwene.
Okay.
Those are our heroes, so there's 4.
4. All right.
Okay. Then, with them is Nynaeve, Moraine, and Lan, and the Bard, whose name, because he's disappeared recently, there's like 4 adults, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, if these 4 kids,
Kids.
I mean they're 18.
Oh, okay.
20.
I was gonna say, are we
the
like
4
Stranger
kids-
Things kids, or are we talking
No.
like?
Yeah, we're not talking Arya.
Okay.
We're not talking Bran. We're talking the Robb Starks,
Jon
the,
Snows. Okay.
Those 4. Then we got 4 adults, so there's 8, and then the big bad. There's one big bad.
One big bad.
The Dark One.
Okay.
We're introduced to him, and then of course he has minions. We have the Fades and the Trollocs, which are his minions.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like watching this unfold on screen and comparing it to someone, it's definitely more Lord of the Rings than it is
Game of Thrones.
because Game of Thrones, he was creating a very complicated tapestry.
Mm-hmm.
This, I imagine, will start getting with 14 books. It's going to get complicated.
Okay.
But it keeps it kind of pretty straightforward in the first book.
Okay. All right. So we're facing a little bit more of a linear story, less of a
Yes.
It's
not
patchwork.
It's not Dany and the Starks and
This, and
the,
trying
the
to
Night's
weave
Watch
them
and
together.
trying to.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
we
like
have a
3 guys who might be marked for something.
okay.
Plus the girl who is actually marked for something else
Okay.
because of her talent, and in the first book they get separated into 3 groups.
Okay.
The basically 3 of the adults go one way, 2 of the guys go another, and with Tom, with one of that's the bard, one of the adults, and then the girl and Perrin, another guy. They all get separated, but they're all working. But they all reunite in the first book.
Okay. So I mean,
So-
they've already split.
Right. So they've got
in Lord of the Rings.
They got scattered, and now but they all knew there was an end game. To get to before moving on to the next thing. So now
Okay.
they're all trying to get back. It was like having been separated, they knew they had get to Camelin.
Okay. So
So-
we're getting almost a complete arc
Yes.
of the entire story happening just in one book.
Yes.
Versus leaving it scattered about.
I mean, I do have the advantage of having read this book once before a few years ago. I don't remember exactly where we are when we end, but we are getting to the climax of it. So
Okay. Excellent. Excellent.
I do know that's coming up in Camelin.
Okay. Another thing that, the next Game of Thrones, obviously Game of Thrones has got to have such a convoluted backstory of, clans and rivalries and things like that. So are we dealing with any families? Are we dealing with any
Politics.
orders or what is the politics?
Okay, politics is a little more complicated.
Okay.
Because first of all, there's the history. You have the dragon, who's supposed to be the good guy,
Okay.
and you have the Dark One, and they're locked in an eternal battle. And the last time we had a dragon, he went crazy and almost destroyed the world.
Okay, that's kind of Game of Thrones-ish.
Okay, and so now we are fast forwarding 1,000 years or whatever, and everyone's waiting for the dragon to be reborn.
Okay.
The Dragon Reborn is actually book 3.
Book 3.
And so one thing we're fairly certain of, we can assume, or I guess that we are assuming, because I've not read the Dragon Reborn, so I don't even know if it's true. But we're certainly led down the path that one of our 3 male characters is the Dragon Reborn. But there's been what they call false dragons that have come along through the ages.
Oh.
And they're dealing with a false dragon right now.
Who is, I'm guessing, in charge or kind of leading the
No,
fight?
basically, okay, so this is why it gets complicated. So, there's this thing called the One Power, which is like basically the source of magic.
Okay.
And women can touch it. They call it touching the One Power and do miraculous things. They can heal you. They can call down lightning. They can they can put up a wall of flame to, cover your escape. But if men touch it, because it's been tainted by the Dark One, if men touch it, they go crazy. And so if a man has the talent, because it's an inherent talent, if a man has a talent and touches the One Power, the idea is he might be the Dragon Reborn, but in all likelihood, he's a false dragon, and he's going to go crazy and like unleash the power and like kill people.
Okay.
So we're dealing with with the assumption that one of our heroes is the Dragon Reborn, and I'm assuming the Dragon Reborn can control the power. He finally beats the Taint. And so the Aes Sedai, who's one of our main, what I call adult characters, she, can use the one power. She knows that these boys are important. She also knows Egwene can touch it, and she could come join her ranks as an Aes Sedai. So that's why Egwene is, I feel, is included one of her heroes.
Okay.
She can go and have training at the tower, become a powerful woman.
Okay.
And then one of the men are going to be a powerful man, powerful hero.
So,
and so then we have them, and then of course they have all their political factions. Because there's some who are like, if a man can do it, boom, we're out, we're done, get rid of him, castrate him. I don't know if they kill him or if they just were able to like, the way they describe it, it almost feels like they castrate them and they can't touch the one power anymore. They don't actually talk about castration, but it feels like that's what they're talking about.
They put the man out of the running.
Yes, they put they get him to where he can't do anything.
What better way to put a man out of running for a man's thing than by?
In the meantime,
Yes.
there is a queen of the realm,
Mm-hmm.
and then the Dark One is locked away in his eternal tower, and he's getting to break through,
Mm-hmm.
which is also an indication that the Dragon Reborn must be coming up, because the only one who can really tackle the Dark One is the Dragon Reborn.
Okay, so a balancing of powers.
And our four heroes all come from a backwater where they've lived a simple country life.
Of course.
So they don't know nothing about politics, and to them it's practically myth and legend. And they have experienced things like the Trollocs, who they thought was a myth, because they'd never experienced them that deep in the two rivers where they're from.
Okay, all right. So we've got elements of kind of like the Muad'Dib and the Bene Gesserit sisterhood, kind of like from Frank Herbert's science fiction thriller, the Dune series. We've got elements of good versus bad, kind of that Star Wars, one balancing the other. I mean, all sorts of different things going on there.
And another thing that we deal with getting deeper into the realm is the concept of Dark Friends, which are the people who have aligned themselves with the Dark One. And so they are basically his emissaries in the world, as it were, or his lieutenants in the world.
Okay, all right.
So they're basically
openly lieutenants, or are we talking
no. They're
the queen has her court, and all of a sudden, the guy in charge of the money is actually
no. They're subversive.
a bad guy in Surprise.
They're definitely subversive.
Subversive. Okay, all right. So have we the next thing that I wrote down here? Characters, villains. Main characters, which you've already covered. I think the four favorite characters we want to be looking out for. For instance, in Game of Thrones, we very much loved Arya, we loved Jon, we loved Tyrion almost from the very beginning. Villains, obvious villains, those subversive villains. What can you give us?
Well, okay. Speaking of villains, so the main villain,
The Dark One,
is the Dark One. But we also, I forgot about, we have the Children of the Light, who are supposed to be the good guys. But they are so good, they're bad.
Oh dear.
Okay, because they are zealots.
Okay.
And there may be, so they think that they are in charge of the good. They're the extreme far right is what they are.
Okay, we're doing so much good.
And this is from 89 and 90, so we didn't even have the extreme far right, so it's not even that political.
Okay, all right. Let's see.
But we have one of them as a lead. There's a leader in them, who, is kind of one of our villains because he doesn't know he's a villain.
Okay.
He thinks he's a good guy.
He thinks he's doing good,
but he's a dick. He's a
dick.
villain.
Okay.
Let's see. Our favorite characters. It's going to be hard. I mean, Matt is. Of the three guys, he's the one that doesn't really seem to have a destiny, but he's always the fun one, so he could be interesting. I think Rand who is destined, we believe, to be the Dragon Reborn. he is going. I don't know. He's the hero, so I don't know. He's going to be that interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, personally, I think for me, Perrin is the most interesting character because
Perrin.
he has an ability, an age-old ability that he didn't know about. He can talk to wolves.
Okay, yes, I was reading about that on some of the kind of like the basic general trivia of it. You know, of the three boys, four being kind of the key main characters, the three boys and this girl,
Mm-hmm.
all of them possessing traits that are of note that have not been seen or at least mentioned in this area where they live, but in the heart of everything going on are kind of everyday common occurrences that they are being thrown into. Mentions, you know, these dream wolves, you know, people who can dream or communicate through wolves. There are people who have channeling capabilities. There are this dragon reborn.
Well, no, but he's not dreaming and talking to wolves. This isn't like the Starks.
Okay.
This is like the wolf comes up and just they have a mental connection. The wolf could be like, "Hey," you know.
Okay,
And-
so just a
And even though the wolves aren't really
Communication.
talking in manners that we would understand as humans, you can understand.
okay.
You know, and I don't know if he necessarily sees through their eyes, but he can feel like out where they are, and you know he can see like that you know they can communicate over expanse,
Oh, okay.
not a terrible you know, but over a certain distance.
It's not a direct line of sight,
Yeah.
but like, you know,
There's-
hey, what's on the
it's-
other side of
it's
that
kind
wall?
of a connection to, almost to a subnet.
Okay.
A wolf subnet. Now it does have limitations, but they can scout out ahead, and you can kind of stay linked to them and say, oh, they're Trollocs ahead because
So-
they smell them.
Quasi changeling capabilities, or
Right. I mean, other than maybe his eyes changing, because the one guy that we've met who is a wolf talker, his eyes are definitely wolf-like.
Okay.
And I haven't got to it, but I have a feeling Perrin's eyes change. I have
Okay.
a memory of that.
All right.
So,
We have characters developing into.
yeah. So what he's developing,
Those things.
it's a power,
Okay.
an ability to connect with the wolves.
They're learning, they're harnessing,
Yeah.
they're strengthening, they're
Yeah,
gaining.
and you know, and be part of their brotherhood, so to speak.
Okay.
It's not a shapeshifter type thing. Then
Not
he
a
turns into a wolf.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
Let's see. One of the next big things is, let's see. One of the things Game of Thrones had, you know, that obviously another show would need to have as a back support. Game of Thrones had a very detailed history, not given to us so much in the first book. Kind of learned, pieced together throughout, you know, various tailings, you know, not like what they did back when they, you know, the Sack of Valerian, or like when they did, you know, the First Men, you know, learning how, you know, the history of the Game of Thrones took place. Is there a definite history that is explained when you start out with?
Well, I mean, we do start off with a prologue that gives us the breaking of the world, which is
Breaking of
where
the
the
world.
dragon, the first dragon, went crazy and killed a bunch of people and almost destroyed the world.
And to my knowledge, between the breaking of the world and the events in the first book, about 2,000 years have passed.
Thousands of years.
Thousands. Okay, so 3,000 years have passed.
I mean, I don't know the exact timeline there,
Well,
but
Wikipedia says 2 or
yeah,
3,000.
many.
But there have been there's been the breaking, and then there have been 2 subsequent other big major events that have happened in the world, and then still time has passed to where these characters are now. So there's quite a bit of history as far as, you know, in comparison to the Game of Thrones. You have the Children of the First Men, you have the coming of the Targaryens, you have
Yeah, I mean, we've had the breaking of the world, and we've had, I believe, the Age of Heroes followed that.
Age of Heroes, and I think I remember a vague reference to one more thing, but it could be just those 2. So we do have a history. Is it presented to us in the prologue? I mean, a common
Well, the
sense
breaking
sort
of the world
thing?
was presented to us in prologue. The rest of it is, I think, it's going to be introduced to us
bit by bit.
bit by bit. But because we do have bards in this world who tell stories. One of the big things they talk about is the Great Hunt, which was in the Age of Heroes,
Okay.
to find the horn, and how all the heroes went to different corners of the earth to try to find it. And they're gonna have a new Great Hunt. That's the second book.
Okay.
So we'll probably learn more about the Great Hunt and they talk about, oh, he's telling stories of the Great Hunt. Well, there were so many heroes in it, you could tell a few of them every night, and there were
Always somebody new.
Yeah, always somebody new.
Okay. Alrighty then. Let's see. One of the big things in Game of Thrones was a sense of terrain, the map, the landscape. You had the Starks in the north, you had the south, you had, the deep south, you had Westeros, you had Essos, you had all these different regions. Are we faced with similar things? Do we have events happening in multiple places? Do we have a concrete realm?
We have a concrete realm. We do not have events happening in all the places.
Place. Okay.
Not like plot events.
Not plot.
Like they'll talk about in the Reach, this is happening, or
in the Waste
over here in the Waste, this is happening. But our heroes are in.
Okay. So the story is following.
We don't have Dany and Essos and the Starks in the north, and it's just.
And like how you mentioned the Lord of the Rings, we don't have Sam and Frodo or.
Yeah,
Frodo
we're still in the Fellowship,
place.
so we're still all together.
Okay, everybody. Well,
even with being broken apart, they're still all coming back.
Okay, all right.
They haven't gone off on set totally because they were separated by accident.
Okay.
So they're coming back together.
Can you give me 4 key areas that have been mentioned that are going to be important, you believe, later on, other than obviously the Waste, which I've read is kind of like a vast deserty area, separating the region that they're in now from another region on the same mainland.
Well, I think.
Do you have a map?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yes.
So, and it's hard to tell because, we started over on the west side. The tower, Tar Valon, is going to be very important.
Okay.
I think that's, in many ways, that's going to be the King's Landing.
Okay, the capital.
That's where it's not the capital of the place, but in terms of importance.
Okay.
I think. And then
there's the Badlands, which are up top.
Yeah, the Badlands are up high. The Blight.
The Blight, yes.
The Blight.
All the bad places seem to always be far north.
That's where Shal Ghul is, and that's where the Dark One is in prison.
Okay. What have we got going west?
The west.
You've got a big sea.
We have the ocean west.
Now, I did read that there is another area possibly introduced later on in the book series that is not even introduced or mentioned in the first few books, but it is west of the sea.
Okay, I don't know about that.
Okay. What about
and
east?
Tyr is also going to be an important place.
Okay, Tyr.
Tyr, and then I don't know where the Waste is on here.
Is it kind of this over here on the other side of the mountains?
Yeah, it must be past here, but
okay.
But yeah, so
there's a definite realm, a place to explore, things where we could get some different diversity.
Because there are places like right now, once they get to Caemlyn, the ultimate goal is to get to Tar Valon, where Egwene can be taught and where they can find out what's important about the 3 boys.
Okay.
But they've already talked about something that is being held at Tyr that that's going to be important to the dragon being reborn.
Okay.
So so Tyr is going to come into play as well.
Alrighty.
So,
let's see. Game of Thrones. There was.
So we've been going at this for a while. How much more do you got?
I've got just one more simple question, one big question, and then the final up.
Okay,
So, quick question. Magic creatures. What do we got? I read. Dragons. Are there wizards? We've got wolf dream.
Well, there's magic that women possess basically by being able to touch the one power.
Okay.
That would be their version of magic.
Okay.
We certainly have creatures like the Trollocs, which seem to be like put together from different creatures.
Kind of a quasi undead.
We have not undead. Just kind of a chimera type.
Okay.
Soldier,
We got this leg, we got this arm, we got this head, and a torso.
Yeah. We have Fades, which are kind of like ring wraiths, basically. And then there's a couple other pretty ugly creatures.
Okay.
We do have undead. We do.
Oh, so there are undead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's an army of darkness.
Cursed daggers. So yeah.
Okay. So the next big thing, and this is something that you have mentioned as well at the very beginning. So we've got Game of Thrones, we've got Wheel of Time, but you've mentioned this is very much more, almost more of a correlation to Lord of the Rings. So between George R. R. Martin, between J.R.R. Tolkien, and between Oliver Rigney or Robert Jordan. What have we?
What was that?
His name James Oliver Rigney Jr., aka the pen name Robert Jordan.
Oh, I didn't know it was a pen name. Okay.
So between
I mean,
those,
or is that the guy who finished the last few books?
oh, that's his name.
Okay, all right.
Pen name Robert Jordan. So between all of those, I mean, you've said that it's very much more Lord of the Rings. Are you finding that is more true the more and more you go through it, or are you finding some similarities too?
The Eye of the World, I think, is very much, you can align it with Fellowship of the Ring.
Okay.
Now, Lord of the Rings was 3 books.
Lord of the Rings was 3
So
books.
this is 14. So I don't know how complicated it's going to get.
It might get more Game of Thrones
and new characters we could be introduced to who have their own histories,
their own backstories,
and that makes me reminiscent of the series written by John Jakes, which started in the Revolution and went all the way practically to the turn of the century.
Okay.
And he had one book, entire book was just meant to introduce a bloodline.
Wow.
All, the characters in the book didn't even carry over. It was and his daughter is important later. He had a whole book about a family so that this illegitimate daughter could be important later.
And explain.
So I don't know what's going to happen.
Alrighty then.
In terms of that.
Well then, final question. So, the idea of this being the next Game of Thrones, which I believe HBO has picked it up or is in the pre-casting.
I think it's Amazon.
Amazon. Okay, so
Amazon is casting it.
they are casting it.
They're doing it.
I did see one Game of Thrones character in it. The guy who played in charge of the Dreadnought Fort. I forget his name. Bolton. Reese Bolton.
Reese Bolton?
Reese Bolton.
Roose Bolton.
Roose Bolton, sorry. The character who played Roose Bolton is cast in the...
Do you remember what character he's playing?
I forget.
I had not heard of that.
I can look it up real quick while we're talking. But the main question is, if this is going to be the next Game of Thrones, in your opinion, what is going to make it the next Game of Thrones? Is it the story itself is going to be Game of Thrones worthy, or is it going to be how they pull it off? I mean, is it going to have to be
It's
cast?
going to be the quality of the filmmaking.
Okay.
Yeah, because people know. I mean, there's a whole line of shows vying to being the next Game of Thrones, and if they don't have quality in filmmaking, or if they royally screw up the story, because with 14 books, unless they think, oh, we'll do this 14 seasons, and then they'll leave us hanging if it fails, they may be conflating some of these books. They may be saying, we're just going to do 7 seasons and just get it all, do 2 books a season. But the advantage that the Wheel of Time has over Game of Thrones is that it's done. They're not working off of outlines. They're not making, changes based on stuff that they don't have fully realized from the creator. This is done. So no matter what conflations they do, taking 3 characters and making them one, that will all develop out of the complete work.
Out of the complete work.
It won't just develop out of coffee talk with George R. R. Martin.
Okay, so we have a complete story that can be folded, mended, bended, however they want to package it. Mm-hmm. Which Amazon's got a lot of money,
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll be able to do it good or on quality as HBO. That character, Michael McElhatton, is going to be Tam Althor.
Okay, so he is the father of one of our main characters. So he's actually a minor character.
Oh,
for now.
dear.
We'll see him at the beginning, and then we'll leave him at home, and go on.
I've got Rosamund Pike as...
Rosamund Pike is the big star. She's playing
Moiraine?
the Aes Sedai. She's playing Moiraine Sedai. And she's basically the Gandalf character.
Okay, she's the Gandalf character. I was trying to look up what else she might have been. Oh, she was... Okay, I know exactly who she is now. Okay, yep. A nobody.
They got a lot of young, which is good. Because
going to be a lot of young nobodies, so...
young unknowns.
Okay, well... unknowns, untapped potential, so get used to a whole new cast of up-and-coming, A-listers. So I guess that was pretty much my thing. From what it sounds like, yes, this is It's got a great foundation. Sounds like it's got a great story, a great background, a great wealth of information that they can pull upon to then create a story worthy of watching memorabilia and what we all know to be the Game of Thrones, moniker, Game of Thrones. Plus, it also kind of works out because, you got Wheel of Time, WOT, Game of Thrones, GOT. Won't be too much, to really learn or change there. So yeah, that's pretty much all that I've got.
All right. So for anyone who's watching us or who's listening to this later, going back to our original plan, we were going to read up to chapter 39 this week. So we will deal with that next week, starting at chapter 33 to 39.
Do you hear that, Audie? Get better.
So up to, but not including chapter 39. So 33 through 38.
Okay.
So we're going to finish reading and discuss next week when Audie is feeling better. And it's not a lot left for me to read in that, so taking care of my new puppy, it won't be so hard.
All right.
So anyway, I guess that's it for Lit this time. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And Audie will be back.
Oh, yeah, you guys do this every other week.
We'll do every other week.
That's right. So plenty of time for Audie to get better. Remember, guys, $1 Patreon, subscribe, get notifications to us. We always appreciate your support. When you watch the video, you want to post anything, ask a question, they'll hopefully bring it up, remember it for the next Lit. Thank you for having me on today's
really
Lit.
Nice Drunk Watch, and now our talk has ended.
Now our talk has ended.
Go make it stop.
Let me go make it stop.
Because Zach has abandoned his post. Oh, they're all outside with the puppy. Should be a stop streaming.